The Dallas Cowboys are once again standing at a crossroads. A franchise that has spent decades balancing ambition, tradition, and sometimes frustrating inconsistency is entering another critical offseason. But unlike previous years, there is a different tone surrounding the organization. The Cowboys are navigating roster decisions, trade opportunities, free agency risks, and draft evaluations with what appears to be a more deliberate process. And when you zoom out and look at everything happening at once, you start to see the bigger picture of where this team is heading. One of the biggest storylines of the offseason revolved around the pursuit of elite defensive talent. For months, the Cowboys were linked to a blockbuster move for star pass rusher Max Crosby. The idea of pairing Crosby with the Cowboys' already talented defensive front captured the imagination of fans across the league. But in the end, the opportunity slipped away when Crosby was traded by the Las Vegas Raiders to the Baltimore Ravens for 2 first-round draft picks. For some fans, the immediate reaction was disappointment. Crosby is the kind of player who can change the identity of a defense overnight. He is relentless, productive, and exactly the type of edge presence that can dictate protection schemes every single week. But when you look deeper into the Cowboys' decision-making process, missing out on Crosby may actually represent a sign of growth for this organization. Reports indicated that Dallas was willing to be aggressive. They were prepared to offer a significant package that included a first-round pick and a second-round selection. That alone shows a willingness to pursue elite talent. But the Cowboys also established a firm boundary. They were not willing to send multiple first-round picks in a deal for Crosby. When the Ravens crossed that threshold, Dallas stepped away. That might sound like a missed opportunity, but it actually reflects a disciplined approach that the Cowboys have struggled with in the past. Historically, this franchise has sometimes chased big names without a long-term plan. This time, however, the front office followed a defined process. They evaluated the value, set a limit, and refused to cross it. That philosophy aligns closely with the approach being emphasized by head coach Brian Schottenheimer. Since taking over, Schottenheimer has repeatedly talked about building a process-driven culture. It's about making calculated decisions instead of emotional ones. And if the Crosby negotiations are any indication, the Cowboys may finally be embracing that philosophy across the entire organization. But passing on Crosby doesn't mean Dallas is ignoring its defensive needs. Quite the opposite. If anything, it highlights how many areas the Cowboys still need to address. This defense is undergoing significant structural changes, particularly with the arrival of defensive coordinator Christian Parker. Parker is implementing more 3-4 looks and emphasizing versatility, intelligence, and communication across the unit. That shift places enormous importance on the linebacker position. And that brings us to one of the most important players on the Cowboys roster heading into the 2026 season, DeMarvion Overshown. Overshown's career so far has been defined by flashes of brilliance mixed with devastating injuries. When he first arrived in Dallas as a third-round pick, there was immediate excitement about his speed, range, and ability to impact the game in multiple ways. But his rookie season ended before it truly began when he suffered a torn ACL during training camp. When Overshown finally returned, the impact was immediate. His closing speed, aggression against the run, and ability to rush the passer made him one of the most dynamic defenders on the field. In fact, at one point he was arguably the second most impactful defender on the entire roster behind superstar pass rusher Micah Parsons. But just as his breakout seemed to be unfolding, disaster struck again. After 13 games, Overshown suffered another severe injury to the same knee. The recovery extended well into the following season, limiting his ability to contribute and once again raising questions about his long-term durability. For Cowboys fans, the situation feels painfully familiar. This franchise has a long and frustrating history of incredibly talented linebackers whose careers were derailed by injuries. Names like Sean Lee, Jalen Smith, and Leighton Vander Esch immediately come to mind. Each of those players showed moments of greatness. Lee was one of the most instinctive linebackers in the league when healthy. Smith battled back from a catastrophic college injury to reach Pro Bowl form. Vander Esch burst onto the scene with an all-pro caliber rookie season. But in each case, injuries ultimately define the narrative. Overshown now stands at a similar crossroads. Entering the final year of his rookie contract, the 2026 season will determine not only his future with the Cowboys, but possibly the trajectory of his entire NFL career. If he can stay healthy and return to the form he showed early in his career, he could become the centerpiece of Dallas' new defensive structure. And frankly, the Cowboys need that outcome more than ever. The roster currently lacks proven depth at inside linebacker. Young players like Shamar James and Justin Barron are still developing, while Marist Liufau is reportedly transitioning to an edge role. That leaves Overshown as the only linebacker on the roster with clear starting-level potential in the new scheme. This is why the Cowboys' offseason strategy must extend beyond trades and free agency headlines. It must also focus on the draft. And one prospect who could potentially reshape the defensive interior is Clemson defensive tackle Peter Woods. Woods is one of the most intriguing defensive line prospects in the upcoming draft class. At 6'3" and 315 pounds, he possesses the size you expect from an interior defender. But what makes him special is how he moves at that size. From the moment he stepped onto the field at Clemson, Woods flashed disruptive traits. As a freshman, he immediately became part of the defensive line rotation and led Clemson's defensive tackles and quarterback pressures. That early production earned him freshman All-America honors and signaled the arrival of a potential future NFL starter. By his second season, Woods was doing even more. Clemson moved him around the defensive front, lining him up both inside and on the edge. That positional versatility became one of his defining traits. Against elite competition, including the nation's top-ranked teams, Woods consistently found ways to disrupt plays in the backfield. What stands out most when studying Woods is his first step. For an interior defender, his get-off is explosive. He consistently threatens gaps before offensive linemen can establish leverage. When that quickness is combined with his raw power, it allows him to collapse the pocket in ways that offensive coordinators absolutely hate dealing with. In many ways, Woods profiles perfectly for an attacking defensive front. His ability to penetrate gaps, convert speed into power, and disrupt blocking schemes makes him an ideal three-technique defensive tackle in a one-gap system. That kind of player can fundamentally change how offenses approach protection. There are still areas where Woods needs development. His pass rush plan remains somewhat raw. When his first move doesn't win immediately, he sometimes struggles to counter and can get stuck on blocks. There are also occasional discipline issues, particularly when he tries to shoot gaps aggressively and leave space behind him. But the upside is undeniable. If he refines his technique and learns how to consistently defeat double teams, Woods could develop into a Pro Bowl-level interior disruptor at the NFL level. His physical profile and play style have even drawn comparisons to Javon Hargrave. For a Cowboys defense that desperately needs interior disruption, that kind of player could be transformative. Right now is the perfect time to say this. If you're enjoying this deep breakdown of the Cowboys' future, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next film analysis and roster deep dive. Of course, building a competitive roster isn't just about star players on defense. The Cowboys also face important decisions with several key offensive contributors. One of the most notable involves wide receiver George Pickens. Pickens delivered a massive season for Dallas, finishing with 93 receptions, 1,429 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That production led the team and established him as one of the most dangerous vertical threats in the league. As a result, the Cowboys placed the franchise tag on him for the 2026 season. That tag carries a fully guaranteed salary of approximately $27.3 million for 1 year. For Pickens, it represents a massive jump from the relatively modest earnings he accumulated during the early years of his rookie contract. But the franchise tag is rarely a long-term solution. Both the player and the team will likely continue negotiating toward a multi-year extension before the midsummer deadline. And considering how important Pickens has become to the offense, securing his long-term future will be one of the organization's top priorities. Another key contract situation involves All-Pro kicker Brandon Aubrey. Aubrey is currently navigating restricted free agency, with the Cowboys expected to place a second-round tender on him. That tender would guarantee him around $5.8 million for the 2026 season, while also protecting Dallas with draft compensation if another team attempts to sign him. From the Cowboys' perspective, the leverage is obvious. They either retain one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL at a manageable price, or they receive a second-round pick in return. In today's NFL, where every roster spot and cap dollar matters. That kind of flexibility is extremely valuable. As free agency approaches, the Cowboys must also avoid several common mistakes that teams often make during this chaotic period. Overpaying players based on past production rather than future potential is one of the biggest traps. Edge rushers coming off career seasons often regress statistically after signing massive contracts. There is also the risk of signing players who thrived in a specific defensive system but struggle to replicate that success in a different scheme. For a team implementing new concepts under Christian Parker, identifying players who fit the system is far more important than simply collecting recognizable names. The smartest teams understand that free agency should be used to fill specific holes rather than build the entire roster. The real foundation of championship teams is still the draft. That's where sustainable talent pipelines are created. And that brings the Cowboys full circle back to the central challenge of this offseason. They must build a defense capable of competing in a rapidly evolving NFL while maintaining long-term roster flexibility. Whether it's developing players like Overshown, drafting disruptive prospects like Peter Woods, or navigating contract decisions with stars like Pickens, every move contributes to a much larger vision. The Cowboys are trying to build something sustainable. And if they stick to the disciplined process they showed during the Max Crosby negotiations, this offseason could mark the beginning of a very different era in Dallas. If you want more deep-dive analysis on the Cowboys roster, draft prospects, and the strategy shaping the future of this franchise, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next breakdown.